It looks like that Putin is literally getting out of options, and he is getting pretty desperate because he ordered to abandon civilians in Belgorod. At the same time, Transnistria was attacked, most likely also by the order of Putin, and there are big escalations and unrest right now happening in Poland. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. Today is a sophisticated one. I have no idea why it just felt like it, but okay. So, we have this picture of a shower head from one of Russian, I'm assuming, apartment buildings, and the person decided to install an engraved Russian symbol, shower like controls and everything, and obviously the most interesting one is the shower head itself. Most likely it was ordered from AliExpress or Alibaba, like, you know, this Chinese marketplace which takes like 3 months for your $3 item to arrive. Long story short, it did arrive. It does not look like of a highest quality, and at least I'm thankful that the colors of the Russian flag are in the correct order. White, blue, red, which hopefully in the near future becomes white, blue, white. So, this person decides to do this renovation, maybe thinking he will be noticed by Putin himself, like one of the biggest patriots of his country. But in reality, he was only being laughed at in the social media, including by his fellow Russians. And if Putin indeed somehow mysteriously notices this guy, I think he will only be considered as the greatest Z-patriot worthy to be serving along the front lines. And guys, please now let me know down below in the comments if you would like to do exactly the same modifications in your shower. And if you do want this specific shower head, then also guys, do not subscribe to my channel, because we do not have here battle babushkas or Z-patriots, we only have normal people. If you want to keep your shower free of such ridiculousness, in this case, please guys, like this video and subscribe to my channel, because you're more than welcome into the Russian dude army. Thank you so much, let's continue. And so yes guys, time to get serious. Now let's talk about some escalations and unrest in Poland. Then we're gonna talk about attack in Transnistria, and then some crazy decisions by the Russian authorities which they took in regards to Belgorod. And so yes, first of all, to begin with Poland, the Polish farmers, they decided to scale up their protests, and reportedly this Wednesday at least 70,000 Polish farmers went on the street protesting. One of the main reasons of their protest is extremely cheap Ukrainian grain, which is making them lose a lot of money. And so these 70,000 farmers, they blocked at least 500 different roads. As you can see on this map, these are just the estimations where this protest took place pretty much across the entire country. Another thing is that they decided to completely shut down the border between Ukraine and Poland to the west of Lviv, and they only allowed at least only one bus every 2 hours to cross the border, but nothing which carries agricultural products. And just according to the very rough estimations, this blockade can cost the Ukrainian budget 6.5 billion hryvnias, which will be the equivalent of fully equipping 1.5 entire brigade of the Ukrainian army. So yes, people might think, well, these are just farmers protesting, but as you can see, it has severe consequences of Ukrainians' ability to protect themselves. But so yes, the Polish farmers protesting, it's not the only place where escalation happened. Obviously, besides Ukraine and Russia itself, something similar happened in Transnistria. So let's talk about this right now. So to sum things up quickly, Transnistria is this unrecognized territory in between Moldova and Ukraine, which is under, let's call it like this, Russian rule. And long story short, couple of days ago, a helicopter, the military one, Mi-8, was destroyed on the airfield, which allegedly belongs to the Ministry of Defense. According to this video, which shows the result of allegedly a drone attack, as you can see, the helicopter is fully destroyed. And guess what? Russia immediately started blaming Ukraine for this attack, but after a very short investigation, which lasted less than 24 hours, the official representatives of Moldova, they said that Ukraine had absolutely nothing to do with this attack, which basically allows us to assume that Russians decided to attack their own allegedly, territory Transnistria, say that, okay, look, there is an escalation happening on this territory, so we must intervene in the near future, as soon as possible. But in reality, Russians only bamboozled themselves, because once again it took less than a day for the entire world to know that once again it was not Ukraine. Simple as that. And now let's quickly talk about the situation in the south and in the east of Ukraine before talking about situation in Belgorod and extremely questionable decisions that Putin decided to make. And first of all, right here is a very interesting video from Krinky, which, yes, Ukrainians still hold a bridgehead to this settlement. And long story short, Ukrainians used a small FPV drone to intercept a plane type drone, which is much bigger, which is the ones that belong to the Russian army. And small drone was successful. Then we have a couple of more videos, also allegedly from the southern front lines, where Ukrainian drones destroyed two very interesting military vehicles of Russians. The first one is just a regular infantry fighting vehicle, but the second one is a self-propelled artillery system called Msta-S. Both of these destructions cause an enormous ball of fire. But then we even have even more intriguing video from Terne, already along the eastern front lines, where Russians decided to tow an abandoned Leopard tank which belonged to the Ukrainian army, which was almost fully destroyed because it took 2 Russian tanks to tow it back. Ukrainians saw it and they saw an opportunity. So instead of destroying their own tank on the battlefield, they allowed Russians to actually tow it back to their base. And in the process of doing this, Ukrainians destroyed 2 Russian fully functioning tanks. So this was a very pretty clever bait. And well, as always, Russians try to increase the protection of their tanks with whatever materials they can find lying next to them. So for example, right here is the picture of a T-72 tank in Marinka front line. And guess what? This is just unbelievable. Well, Russians used empty wooden boxes from ammunition to enhance the armor of their own battle machine. Well, as you guessed, as pretty much it is pretty obvious, wooden boxes were not able to stop the attack by Ukrainian tank, and subsequently it led to the destruction of the Russian T-72. And for all of this, the only response that Russians know how to do is unfortunately once again attacking civilian neighborhoods. Such as, for example, the most recent one happened in Kharkov, and as you can see, the destruction is pretty extensive, but the building is still standing. And while the Putin's army is fighting against civilians because these are the only achievements and victories they can do in Ukraine, the actual Russian freedom fighters, they do the really good thing, specifically in neighboring regions, in neighboring settlements. So let's talk about this right now, with the main focus of today's episode being on Belgorod. First of all, according to local residents, pretty much this is already a daily routine. A lot of them were awakened by some very loud noises. As always, Russia immediately blamed Ukrainians for these attacks, but as you will see soon enough, this might not be exactly the case. As you already know, there are 3 major anti-Putin forces trying right now to breach Russian-Ukrainian border, which are the Freedom of Russia Legion, Russian Volunteer Corps, and the Siberian Battalion. But according to this video, way more people, especially from the West, such as the Romanian tactical group Getka, and then also International Legion and Ichkerian volunteers, and even Belarusian and Georgian regiments and legions, they also decided to start helping those Russian freedom fighters. As you can see, this anti-Putin force grows in size every single day, which is a wonderful news if you are against the regime of Putin. They even showed us this video where pretty much at this point the International Legion is working in between Russian and Ukrainian border, and they are doing this quite successful. There is not that much resistance by the Russian conventional army. The entire video is more than 6 minutes long. It is extremely intense. It consists mostly of the body cameras like GoPros and something like this. There is actual real combat footage, and it has its own ups and downs. The video once again is very intriguing to see. Guys, obviously I will not be able to show full 6 minutes here on YouTube uncensored version. So if you want to see it all, I highly recommend you to do it. It will be uploaded to my Patreon. The link is down below. There is 1 week of free access. But yes, speaking about the original Russian freedom fighters, one of their main combat activities right now is around the settlement Kozinka. And in this another video we can see them successfully destroying a passing by Russian tank, which showed absolutely no resistance to being destroyed. And guess what? This is just ridiculous. The Ministry of Defense of Russia, particularly Shoigu himself, he did a report to Putin that every single diversion group, which are only Ukrainians, which tried to breach our borders, they were fully destroyed, fully eliminated, and now Kozinka, the settlement we just talked about right now, is fully liberated from those opposition people, even though literally we received a video from it seeing a Russian tank being destroyed. So yeah, the trustworthiness of the Ministry of Defense of Russia is quite low. But you know what? Even another even more ridiculous thing is that at first, when the breach just started to happen, Shoigu reported that the border of Russia is fully secured, no breach has ever happened. Several days later, without even acknowledging that it did happen, he started saying that all diversion groups are fully eliminated, the border is now secure 200%. Now he says exactly the same. The border was never breached, diversion groups are eliminated, the border is secured 300%. Well, that's Shoigu, like there's nothing else to add here. Well, actually no, well, you know what, to be honest, actually yes, there is something we can add. Because according to this video also from Kozinka, as you can see, literally empty civilian houses being destroyed by Russians with the aerial guided bombs FAB 500. Like, there is not even combat activities near them or anything like this. Russians decide to just simply destroy them. And according to some communications between civilians which were intercepted by anti-Putin forces, those civilians, they do confirm that yes, indeed, these are the attacks by the regular Russian conventional army, because this munition is dropped from the planes, the technology which once again the anti-Putin forces do not possess yet. So there is only one answer possible. These are the Russians attacking their own civilian buildings on their own territory of their own civilians. But we gotta give at least some credit to the conventional Z army. It's not that they always just destroy buildings, sometimes they decide to assault it. So for example, right here is the video of 4 Russian soldiers trying to enter the building which might be even empty because no one is fighting back. And one guy in front throws a grenade, what he thought trying to do it, throw it inside, it bounces back and injures or maybe even eliminates his own comrades. So pretty much, yeah, Russian Z army 0, empty house 1. And I mean, yes, you probably remember a part of the video which I was showing yesterday where a Russian tank was literally just shooting in empty buildings. Then today we have Russian planes dropping munition also in empty buildings. Well, I guess it is much easier to just do that instead of storming it. That's why the Russian army decided to destroy their own civilian buildings. I guess this would be the only logical conclusion. And well, as a result of all of this, there is a joint statement by the Freedom of Russia Legion representative. As a result of all of this, there is a joint statement by the leaders of the Freedom of Russia Legion, Russian Volunteer Corps and the Siberian Battalion, who are pretty much asking the authorities of Belgorod to stop using civilians as a human shield and in fact allow everyone, not just 9,000, the propaganda number, but allow everyone to evacuate Belgorod and the neighboring cities, neighboring towns and villages. Because right now it is an actual modern warfare, combat warfare happening on those territories. And simply Russian anti-Putin forces, they want to avoid unnecessary casualties, which is something what Russia should have done whenever they invaded Ukraine, but nothing like this ever came from the side of Putin regime. And I mean, obviously this is a request which totally makes sense. Why would you need to be using civilians as a human? And I mean, obviously this request, it totally makes sense, and normal countries would obviously either follow it or maybe do it partially or anything like this, well, unless you are the representative of the Russian government. So most likely either Putin or somebody in his closer inner circle, they did not want to show that there is a panic in Belgorod. not to let propaganda and Russian media talk about it. So they said that no, the evacuation is prohibited, civilians must stay, in fact close the roads, put these cement blocks on the road so people cannot escape by cars, contain the spread of the misinformation. Exactly the same thing what they were talking about in Chernobyl TV show by HBO Max, if you've seen it. Well, as you can see, 40 years later, things do not change within the Russian government. So as you can see, the attacks against Transnistria in order to cause destabilization. So as you can see, attacks against Transnistria to destabilize the situation in Moldova, protests in Poland, which most likely fueled also by the Russians, infiltrators or Russian spies, and then as you can see, this huge combat activity in Belgorod and other neighboring regions. As you can see, Putin does kinda look like getting desperate. He wants to attempt anything possible that he knows how to regain the advantage and the initiative in Ukraine, because once again, let's be honest, there's not that many news coming from Ukraine itself, for better or worse. And instead, we are now more and more talking about the already combat activities on the territory of Russia itself. So once again, Putin did not want to let NATO expand, he did want to denazify and liberate Ukraine from Ukrainians, but in the end he got a war on his own land. Guys, I will continue making these videos because right now we are in the very brand new chapters of this war, so please subscribe to my channel. I'm sure many interesting videos are coming. The card will appear to my left side, you just simply need to click it to claim the amazing offer. Also, don't forget about the official Russian Dude merch. Patreon, there's a new $20 tier with many new benefits. And as always, guys, thanks so much for watching and see you tomorrow.